Hello and welcome back to A Christmas Carol Annotate with me. We are now on stave 5 of the novella, so we are right towards the end of our annotations and our explanation of the entire novella. If you have watched the previous videos, then thank you so much for your support and for getting this far. I hope you have found it useful. So we will now get into the beginning of stave 5. So stave 5, the end of it. Yes, and the bedpost was his own, the bed was his own, the room was his own, best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in. I will live in the past, the present, and the future, Scrooge repeated. So the stave begins with Scrooge repeating his words from the end of stave 4 to confirm the sincerity of his pledge. Given that he has woken up on Christmas Day, we can see that his future is already altered. If he hadn't really changed, would he really repeat this promise? As he scrambled out of bed, the spirits of all three shall strive within me. O Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees. He was so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. So the vocabulary used to describe Scrooge contrasts with the way he's described at the beginning of the novella. Now he scrambles, flutters and glows. In stave 1, the cold within him froze his old features, and he was stiffened, so we see the contrasting language used here. And this is a really good way of showing the changing Scrooge, and the changing Scrooge is something that you should be mentioning in almost every single response that you do of A Christmas Carol, so this is a really good way of making sure that you do that. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirits, and his face was wet with tears. "They are not torn down," cried Scrooge, folding one of his bed curtains in his arms. "They are not torn down, rings and all." So Scrooge repeats the narrator's description of the bed, rings and all, from stave 4. Scrooge's precise memory is Dickens showing us that Scrooge will remember the lessons he was taught. "They are here. I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will." So we see him being really optimistic here, whereas before he was really pessimistic and he always saw the bad side of things. But here he's seeing the optimistic, the good side of things. His hands were busy with his garments all this time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance. The use of the word extravagance in a description of Scrooge is a complete contrast to anything we have previously known of him. It shows how he has gone from being a covetous old sinner to someone who is generous and giving. We've also got him really excited about everything, so he's constantly sort of not wearing his clothes the correct way, wearing them the wrong way round, because he's scrambling. He's just so excited to get on with the day and to show everyone the change in him. "I don't know what to do," cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect loukoon of himself with his stockings. I am as light as a feather, I am as happy as an angel, I am as merry as a schoolboy, I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody, a Happy New Year to all the world." So this quotation here, particularly, obviously throughout this there's the use of similes, but this particular quotation, "I am as light as a feather," shows how heavy the burden of being a miser was for Scrooge, and he never really realised how heavy it was of a burden for him to carry. It also echoes Fred's words of how Scrooge only harms himself by being so miserable. "Hello here! Whoop! Hello!" His exuberant declaration of happiness cements the idea behind the changed description of him. He's a complete contrast to the Scrooge of stave 1. So you'll see a recurrent theme throughout it, obviously constantly reflecting on how he's a very changed Scrooge. He had frisked into a sitting room and was now standing there, perfectly winded. "There's the saucepan that the gruel was in," cried Scrooge, starting off again and going round the fireplace. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas Present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right, it's all true, it's all happened, ha ha ha." So he's recollecting exactly what happened with the visiting of all three ghosts and Jacob Marley's ghost as well. So revisiting the settings and the scenes that he was in when the ghosts visited him. Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. So we see here Dickens again exaggerating Scrooge's laugh in the same way that he exaggerated Fred's laugh. So it shows how much Scrooge has missed laughing in this manner. "I don't know what day of the month it is," said Scrooge. "I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello, whoop, hello here." So this metaphor of him being a baby could be symbolic of how he has renewed his life, his intentions, how he has been reborn almost sinless. So you can make references to religion here. So we might as well jot that down. So he was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer, ding, dong, bell, bell, dong, ding, hammer, clang, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious! Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold. Cold, piping for the blood to dance to, golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious! So we've got the repetition of glorious, glorious. We've also got the description of the weather being very different here. So there's the comparison between the earlier weather we saw of foggy weather to still cold weather, but in a more positive light. So um, so the weather that's being described here resembles Scrooge's change in mindset, how he previously saw the weather as foggy and cold. And there was a continuous use of the semantic field of cold weather throughout Stave 1 to describe both Scrooge and the weather, whereas here the weather is still cold, but it's seen as beautiful with the quotation clear, bright, jovial, golden sunlight, almost to show and resemble Scrooge's change in mindset from a negative mindset to a more positive one. "What's today?" cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. "Eh?" returned the boy, with all his might of wonder. "What's today, my fine fellow?" said Scrooge. "Today?" replied the boy. "Why, Christmas Day." "It's Christmas Day," said Scrooge to himself. "I have missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow." "Hello," returned the boy. "Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one, at the corner?" Scrooge inquired. "I should hope I did," replied the lad. "An intelligent boy," said Scrooge. "A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one." "What, the one as big as me?" returned the boy. What a delightful boy. So there's the constant praising of this boy, and it's really important that we notice this change in Scrooge, how he was always very critical of people, he always spoke down to people, but here he's really over exaggerating someone, making someone feel the best possible way they can feel, and how to make others feel good makes us feel good as well. "It's a pleasure said Scrooge. "It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my book. It's hanging there now," replied the boy. So even that, it's a pleasure to talk to him. He never found pleasure in talking to anybody, but here we see that he finds pleasure in talking to somebody he doesn't even know, he doesn't have any form of connection with. "Is it?" said Scrooge. "Go and buy it." "Walk, exclaimed the boy. No, said Scrooge. "I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell 'em to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown." The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand at the trigger who could have got a shot off half so fast. "I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's," whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. "He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be." So he's planning on sending this huge, ginormous turkey to Bob Cratchit's. Now, if you remember back to the Cratchit Christmas, how they had a really small turkey that could barely feed them, the whole family. So Scrooge must have noticed that, and again it shows how actually considerate Scrooge is. So it sort of echoes the quotation about him being solitary as an oyster, how he's almost like there's a pearl within him, but he's just hard to open up. He's very stubborn, but now that he's been opened up, we can see how considerate he is and how caring he is, and how actually he noticed how small that turkey was, and he wants to replace that turkey with a bigger one so that the family can enjoy it. And he's even suggesting that it remain anonymous, which shows again the level of generosity. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye. "I shall love it as long as I live," cried Scrooge, patting it with his hand. "I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Here's the turkey. Hello! Whoop! How are you? Merry Christmas!" It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped 'em short off in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax. "Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town," said Scrooge. "You must have a cab." The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled till he cried. So there's the repetition of chuckle to emphasize how happy he feels, how joyful he feels, how giddy almost he feels, almost like a child. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much, and shaving requires attention even when you don't dance while you're at it. So this is Dickens showing how Scrooge is dancing while he's shaving, again showing how excited he is, almost like a child. But if he had cut the end of his nose off, he would have put a piece of sticking plaster over it and been quite satisfied. He dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. So the fact that he dresses himself all in his best shows one of the many things he learnt from the Cratchits and the other characters he encountered during his journey through Christmas Present. He dresses well because it's symbolic of respect and gratitude, and he's learnt this respect and gratitude through all of the characters, even the minor characters that are not named in the settings that we've previously discussed. He's learnt these characteristics from these people as well as the Cratchits, because even though the Cratchits are poor, they dress in the finest clothes that they have to as a mark of respect and gratitude. The people were by this time pouring forth, and as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas Presents and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humoured fellows said, "Good morning, sir, and Merry Christmas to you," and Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. So people used to avoid him before? But here people are actually saying good morning to him and Merry Christmas to him because he looks so happy and joyful, and he doesn't look as miserable as he used to, and people aren't afraid of him. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before and said, "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe." It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met, but he knew that path lay straight before him, and he took it. So he saw the charity worker that came to ask for charity, and he feels really guilty for the way he treated him, but he knows that he needs to say something to this gentleman in order to fix the way the gentleman views him and the sadness he must have caused the gentleman. "My dear sir," said Scrooge, quickening his pace and taking the old gentleman by both his hands, "how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir." "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes," said Scrooge, "that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness—" "Here," Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me!" cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. "My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?" So he's whispered something in the man's ear, and we can only assume he's whispered that he's going to give him a large portion of money. Now, it's really important, actually, to notice that he whispers the amount that he's going to give to the charity worker, because it shows how he's not doing it out of arrogance. He's not giving money out of arrogance, but he's doing it in the most humble way, in the most hidden way. So it's not a display of his generosity, just as sending the turkey over to the Cratchit's house, who he's going to go to in a moment, anonymously, is a gesture that shows his humility, that shows that he isn't there to show off his generosity, but he's there in order to make people happy. Um, so the fact that Scrooge whispers how much he will donate, so this is clearly a large amount from how astonished the charity worker is, and he anonymously sends the largest turkey to the Cratchit household, shows how his generosity is shown in a humble, secretive way. He doesn't display his generosity, as this would be arrogant and unlikable. This shows how he is genuine in his giving, and he doesn't expect anything in return. "If you please," said Scrooge, "not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favour?" "My dear sir," said the other, shaking hands with him, "I don't know what to say to such money. "Don't say anything, please," retorted Scrooge. "Come and see me. Will you come and see me?" "I will," cried the old gentleman, and it was clear he meant to do. "Thank ye," said Scrooge. "I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you." He went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro, and patted children on the head and questioned beggars, and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows, and found that everything could yield him pleasure. So again Scrooge's walk completely contrasts his earlier self. In stave 1 he deliberately isolated himself and everyone avoided him, which he liked. Nobody stopped him in the street. Now he questioned beggars and found happiness in everything. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock, but he made a dash and did it. "Is your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "Nice girl, very." "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" said Scrooge. "He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank ye." "He knows me," said Scrooge with his hand already on the dining room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear." He turned in gently and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array, for these young housekeepers are always nervous on such points, and like to see that everything is right. "Fred!" said Scrooge. Dear heart alive, how his niece by marriage started. Scrooge had forgotten for the moment about her sitting in the corner with the footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. "Why, bless my soul!" cried Fred. "Who's that?" "It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" "Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness." So he's remembering the Fred's party from that the Ghost of Christmas Present showed him, and everything happened just as it happened in that particular scene, except he was there to enjoy it all. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late, that was the thing he had set his heart upon, and he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1/4 past. No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open, that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello!" growled Scrooge, in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it. So when Scrooge tries to trick Bob into thinking he is angry with him for arriving late, he cannot really achieve the same grumpy voice he used to have. Dickens is using as near as he could feign it to demonstrate that Scrooge has truly changed, to the extent that he can't pretend to be his old self convincingly. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir," said Bob. "I am behind my time." "You are?" repeated Scrooge. "Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob, appearing from the tank. "It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir." "Now, I'll tell you what, my friend," said Scrooge. "I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer, and therefore," he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore I am about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling to the people in the court for help and a straight waistcoat. So Bob has mistaken Scrooge's excitement for somebody who's lost their mind, who's gone crazy, hence the need for a straight waistcoat. So he's going to report him as somebody who's completely mad. He's contemplating and reporting Scrooge of being mad. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken. So contrastingly to the feigned voice that we saw earlier, Scrooge wishes Bob a Merry Christmas with an earnestness that could not be mistaken. As he clapped him on the back, "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, that I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." So Scrooge then shows how far his priorities have changed. He demands that Bob heats the office before he begins work, again contrasting to his earlier self. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. So we've got the use of anaphora of "as good as" to emphasise how much better Scrooge has become, how he's almost the best in his field when it comes to all these righteous titles and attributes. We've also got the repetition of "good" here, which is an obvious confirmation of the newly moral Scrooge. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. Dickens has to confirm that the future Scrooge that we saw in Stave 4 has been completely altered, so we recognise the success and importance of his redemption. And Dickens has embedded Scrooge's perspective here when he reflects on the way that he is happy to allow people to laugh at him, knowing that they laugh out of ignorance, so would be blind anyway, and that he is better off as he is now. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had a further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards, and it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said to us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. So that's the end of A Christmas Carol, Annotate with me. So there's just a few quotations that we've recorded for Stave 5, Scrooge's Redemption, this section of the booklet. So if you haven't already printed this booklet off, a copy of this is available in the description box below. So and it's something that we've referred to in every single video at the end to collect the key quotations. So these are the quotations that we've collected from this section of Stave 5, or all of Stave 5. So if you want to pause it here, you can add this to your copy of the booklet. We've only got a really tiny section for the AO3 section, so the context section. The final stave shows how being kind and generous is something that doesn't only bring joy to those around you, but joy to yourself as alike. It's only by being kind to yourself that you can truly be kind to others. So that's Dickens's most important message, the fact that kindness to yourself results in kindness to others as well. Thank you so much if you had joined us for this series. I hope you found it beneficial and enjoyable. If you have benefited from it, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe. We will be doing some more videos in the future, so if you subscribe to our channel, you'll be able to have access to them. Thank you so much again for joining me throughout this series. Bye.